Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday and welcome to our LinkedIn Live session today, where we're going to talk everything about data, productivity, and data-driven leadership. My name is Stephanie Dorwart, and I am the CEO of Altius. At Altius, we focus primarily on transforming the financial and operations of hospitals and healthcare organizations, and we primarily do it through leadership development, productivity, and workforce optimization. And our goal is to make sure that we're educating, empowering, and elevating leaders and providing them with all the information, data, and tools that they need to provide the highest possible clinical care of the communities that they serve. I'm joined today by Randy Lynn Lucas.
Yes, well, hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here to talk about our productivity, the data that we use to drive decision-making as it relates to productivity, and one of our really great resources that we have to offer our clients, which is our Catalyst Portal, and all of the tools that are out there that really just help leaders with the tools and resources that they need.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on our LinkedIn Live, and thank you for everyone that registered. We had the highest amount of pre-registration that we've ever had for a LinkedIn Live. So if you're joining us live, please make sure that you drop in where you're from, maybe the location within the country, maybe the type of organization that you work for. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're catching the replay, please do the same thing. We always track comments and love to interact with our leadership team and our listeners. So we're here today to talk about Catalyst, Randy Lynn. And one of the things I think is extremely important to share and to talk about is why did we actually move into the online environment from the old days of the servers and Excel spreadsheets and actually launch Catalyst?
I think it's a great question. I actually think it kind of goes a little bit further back in the evolution of how we supported our clients with productivity management. Because if you think back to the early years, right? You're saying, Excel spreadsheets, the early years of productivity management. I actually took a trip down memory lane and started to look at our old reports, the old reports that we would provide to department managers. And the lack of information that was on those reports was really interesting. And so I started to think about, okay, that's all we maybe thought we needed, 15, 17 years ago. And we have since evolved to provide such data-rich reporting, such data-rich tool with Catalyst that I just am impressed with the evolution of what we've been able to provide to our clients so that they can make stronger decisions. So thinking about Catalyst, just Catalyst alone.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Absolutely.
For everyone that's been in the industry for a little bit, I want to go down memory lane as well, because I can remember back to whenever I worked in a hospital, and the only productivity tools that we had were actually books and benchmarking books where you had to flip through the book and actually find the information that you're looking for. And that's always, fun because the data was dated. You knew it was old. Who knows how old it was? And sometimes you can never find what you were looking for. And you actually didn't really know where the data came from. And I see we have some people calling in and signing in from South Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us. Love to have Southern California in the house as well.
Nice.
So we definitely have some different states. Keep them coming. We'd love to know where everyone's from.
Yeah, so I love the point that you just made about the challenge of finding data, right? So that's actually one of the reasons why, one of the driving reasons why we developed Catalyst. And I think that we're able to take a look at Catalyst here while we're talking about it, so we can share that with everyone. But one of the biggest complaints that we heard as we evolved with our clients through the journey of productivity and the journey of data was that data is always in too many places. So as it relates to productivity, we have a lot of pieces of information that need to come into productivity, right? So we have our own individual target that we need to find. We have the percentiles, those comparisons, the benchmarks. Where are they? Where do we go to find them? And then how do we compare them to our actual performance? Overtime is part of the issue. Agency hours, they're always a challenge to find. Our budget, our non-productive time, how we're trending, our volume, all of those things that go into managing productivity. And we've heard over the years that there's so many different places we have to go to find that information. So the one thing that we did through our ION reports and through Catalyst was create a comprehensive one-stop shop. So you don't have to go to multiple places. If you want to see how you're performing productivity-wise against your budget, it's right there for you. If you want to see how many agency hours you have, it's right there for you. If you want to see what your overtime is, it's all right there for you, so that you aren't wasting time, because that's really productivity is about efficiency.
Yep.
So we're not wasting time searching down, hunting down the data that we need.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, because one of the things that we hear as complaints often is you have to go to multiple locations to find the information, and then you have to piece it together, actually tell the story.
Yeah.
So one of our driving forces and goals within Catalyst was to provide all the information on one-stop shop and be able to quickly tell the story, so that you can look at it easily and know, where am I, how am I trending, what's happening, what is my agency utilization, what are my rolling averages looking like, and how is this data playing into everything. And another piece that is really important to us with Catalyst is that the information went straight to the manager's inboxes every 2 weeks or every day if they want to. So the information had to be sent out so that they can actually access it on your phone, on your tablet, and make it easy to retrieve. Because if we're making the information difficult for our leaders to get because they have to go sign in, forgot their password again, can't get in, sometimes it becomes burdensome. So we wanted something that's easy. It's pushing as well as pulling.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, access to data, the fast ability to make decisions and react to that data. So to your point, telling the story, it's all right there. We can see the story. We can see the progression, the trajectory that the department is on, and it gives them the information to make solid decisions, data-driven decisions, without being paralyzed by the analysis. It's right there. It's easily understood. It's easily accessible, and then they're able to react to it and make the difficult decisions at times that they need to make.
Absolutely. So it's another chance for some participation. For all of you who are watching, listening, if your organization has productivity right now, hey, hello from Houston. Thank you for joining us. Your organization has a productivity system, or your organization has data, or has benchmarks in place. What are some of the things that are working well for you? What are some of your frustrations? What don't you like about it? What would you like to see change? We'd love to hear from you and see what your comments are about what data is doing to you and how are you using the data, and just share anything at all that's valuable to you. Now, Randy Lynn, one of the things that we really are faced with, besides just the fact that data is a maze, and a lot of people and providers and healthcare leaders are navigating that maze, trying to piece together data from so many different disparate systems. But in addition to that, what are some of the challenges that our clients are looking to solve with data? What are some of the tools that are really helpful for them whenever they're looking at productivity information?
Well, I do think that there is such a labyrinth of data out there. I think data accuracy is a really, really key part to the success of using data, and then being able to use the tools. So I think most importantly, we need accurate data. And when we have to piece it together or go through that maze, that labyrinth of searching for data, that makes us become a little bit exhausted, right, through the process. And then we sometimes just don't even really use the data at times. So again, when we think about the tools that are available on Catalyst, those tools are there to allow decision-making and have confidence in decision-making, have confidence in that data. So thinking about some really great tools that we should and could be using, forecasting tools, right? So when we think about forecasting and we think about a new service line or a new surgeon coming on board, right? And we're absolutely excited to bring that new surgeon or service line on, because we're going to grow volume. And we want that volume to grow. It's going to grow steadily. We know there's going to be a ramp up period, but sometimes what we immediately think as a team, as a leader, is I'm going to need more staff. Obviously, I need more staff because we have more volume coming through. But what these forecasting tools can do for you is really slow down that thinking, slow down that knee-jerk reaction to needing to hire immediately, because it's going to show you your capacity over time. How and when do we need to ramp up, or do we even need to ramp up? Or does our staff have the ability to take on more volume? And that's all laid out for you through forecasting tools.
I think that's a great example, because really, when you're thinking about forecasting tools, and let's just say a surgeon coming on board is supposed to bring us 10% more volume, and you're looking at the clinic staff, you're looking at the operating room staff, it's important when you have all of the data there to also look at things that could help you build efficiency within those tools. Are you able to optimize the operating room schedule through utilization? So not only is the orthopedic surgeon coming on board, but what can we do with the operating room to look at that data and understand how could we get the hour per operating room case as efficient as possible during that time, while at the same time working on the data on the clinic side to understand what opportunities are there.
Mhm.
And with the proactive scheduling, with the proactive forecasting, you can trend the tripping point at the exact day and time where it's anticipated that that clinic would need more staff. And even more importantly, as an HR director or as someone that's responsible for your strategic workforce, you can back into when those positions should be posted and what your lead time is to get them oriented and on board and trained before you actually need them. And I think that is the brilliant, nature of having proactive information, such as a prospective tool within Catalyst to actually build out some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anytime that we can be proactive around decision making, anytime that we can be thoughtful, it's always a benefit to our operations. I think we have a question. Go ahead, Stephanie.
So the question is from Stephen Austin, and I believe he was joining us from South Carolina.
Excellent.
It's with all the great technology in my world, I still often rely on paper and a pen to analyze information. Do you ever get frustrated with what it takes to use technology efficiently? I'll speak for myself and I'll say yes. I think using technology efficiency is always part of the nature of the game and understanding what technology and how to use it. I think as human beings, we simply are always going to go back to paper and pencil at times. However, as technology becomes more advanced and there's more AI that comes into it, more machine learning, more algorithms, Stephen, I think that the nature and the ability is that what we're doing on pen and paper becomes less and less, and even more importantly, the ability for the technology to do algorithms and calculations for us that we don't even think of becomes more and more. I think that's the really exciting precipice that we find ourselves right now in healthcare, is there's not only the ability to know what the median, better, and best benchmarks are for your particular clinic or your providers or your hospital department, but you can actually through that understand, well, how much volume do I need to get to those? What are the best practices and levers that I can pull to get there? How can I do it with staffing, and understand all the different components that are playing into it, and then pick the ones that matter the most to you that can make the biggest difference. And I think that's what's fascinating about where we are right now.
Absolutely. And I love this question because it makes me think about how we developed some of the tools that we did within Catalyst and for our clients. And it's because of that right there. It was, difficult to maybe get to what the answer that they wanted. It was difficult to get to how much volume do I need to be at that percentile level. I know how many hours I need to reduce, but what volume do I need? Because there's two sides of the equation.
Right.
And how efficiently can that data be given to me? So I think a lot of our tools were rooted in that frustration that it's difficult to find the information that you need. It's difficult, cumbersome at times to know how much volume you need or know what that trajectory is, that projection of forecasting. And so our goal was to have those quick, efficient answers for you within Catalyst so that when you pull something up, one of the tools that comes to mind is our comparison calculator that's out there that's just going to show you how much volume do you need to be at a certain percentile at best practice or that 90th percentile, or how many FTEs, how many hours do you need to decrease by? And how do we balance the two together? And it's right there. All you have to do is choose your department and it calculates it for you. So it's quick and it is not cumbersome, and hopefully it's not frustrating for our clients. But I think that it was the needs of our clients and really listening to them and trying to meet those needs that built the robust tools that we have now to share.
And sometimes in the healthcare industry, there are unintended consequences that occur when you have data, but you don't have all of the data that you need, and maybe even you have a lack of data in certain areas. And I'm just going to use a great example that came up yesterday during a conversation with a colleague who was, talking about a situation that they had with productivity at their organization and a decision that they had made that had an unintended consequences. And so, many of you on this call, I'm sure, work within a healthcare organization that has family practices or clinics or even walk-in clinics. And they made the decision to extend the hours of the walk-in clinic from 4:30 end date to, I think they extended it to a 7 p.m. 3 days a week, or no, 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. And the staff determined that they were going to work 10-hour shifts on those 4 days opposed to working the standard 5 days and 8-hour shifts. And while that's a great model and everyone was on board, thought it was a fantastic idea, they failed to think and take into consideration that what happens whenever that family practice and walk-in clinic is closed on Friday? Where do those patients now go? And they all ended up going to the emergency room. And in certain cases, they were going to the emergency room for care that could very easily be provided within the clinic practice. And so now you have patients in the emergency room backing things up more on Friday. And, in a lot of hospitals and healthcare organizations, the, staff that's on staff and on board Saturdays and Sundays in areas like radiology, laboratory, other components might be a little bit less than it is during the week. So they couldn't figure out, why is our ER backing up so much on Friday with patients trying to get in? And so now we went to a situation with a clinic where we were just going to extend our hours to an emergency department challenge. But with the right data and really thinking through all consequences that could occur, you can use that data and make a different decision.
Yes, absolutely. Again, data is power. Data is going to help us make stronger decisions around operations. And hopefully they pivoted quickly and went back to a different plan. And they're not continuing down that path. So let's talk a little bit more about Catalyst and some of the tools that we have there. And then we're actually going to do a little sneak peek into our dashboard and some of the features. But another tool that I wanted to make sure we talked about was the staffing guide tool that we have out there. And so staffing guides are a commonplace, right, in our inpatient units. And there's usually a paper, a binder, or some type of staffing guide that the leaders are using to make decisions around flexing up and down according to census. It's there for the directors, the managers, the off-shift supervisor, whoever's making those decisions and when. But one of the things that we heard as a challenge around staffing guides is they sometimes only have direct patient care. And when you think about your productivity target and you think about hitting your productivity target, there is indirect care and there's fixed positions.
Yes,
now, I don't love the term fixed position, but they're real. They're there. They happen. It's your manager. It could be an educator. It could be a clinical care coordinator. There are various positions depending on the size of your department, the scope of your department, that are truly fixed. They are not going to flex up and down according to volume. But your staffing ratios don't give you that hour per workload unit necessarily. So the staffing guide that we built within Catalyst gives you both. It gives you your variable and how you're going to flex up and down according to your census and what your hour per patient day is going to be with those variable positions at each of the census points. So now we can see, okay, we have our RNs, we have our PCTs, we have our unit secretary, maybe we have a ADT nurse in there, and our hour per patient day is 8.9, throwing an hour out there. And that's great, but we're never meeting our productivity target because we're not actually building in our fixed positions, like our manager, potentially an educator, whatever is on that side. So that 8.9 actually needs to bump up to 9.7 or 9.5 or whatever that turns into based off of your average daily census. And so that staffing guide gives you the ability to real-time play with those numbers and see the impact of those various fixed positions and the variable positions as they relate to your census and your target.
It's a great example of how a staffing guide tool that's so simple, but can be so complex if you're using it on the back of an envelope or going back to the frustration of doing it on paper or even an Excel spreadsheet. And one of the other things I want to point out about that is a lot of times we'll work with, hospital patient units or even departments, and they have their staffing grid. They may even take into account the fixed positions and the administrative, but it's for one census point.
Right.
Or it's just based off of their average volume. So all they know is on an average day at our average daily census, at our average clinic volume, this is where our staffing is. And they've never thought about what happens as you go up and down on those census points, or when do you need to bring in someone else at your clinic? When does your clinic volume trip into the next phase, or when should you say, oh, well, maybe we don't need as many, staff members today. So I think that's also a great piece to be able to understand the different census points.
Absolutely. And that's a conversation we have consistently when we're working through staffing guides with our clients is, it can't just be that one specific average daily census because it is your average and we need to go up and down around it. So I think that's a great point.
And we have another comment or question that I do want to address from Stevens, but aren't you concerned that in a competitive situation, when someone using the same systems will give similar responses, causing a potential client to lose faith in both submissions? It's a great question. And, I think a good thing to consider. And, the way that I interpret this is, when we at Altius have one comparative or one information, we give one response, and a competitor might give a little bit of different responses. The different response is going to lose faith in both submissions. And I think, when we're talking about data and we're talking about benchmarks, the one thing I want to make here is just a philosophy that we have at Altius is data, benchmarks, whatever the information is, it's a starting point. And it's not necessarily right. It's not necessarily wrong. It's information. And whether the data is from one benchmarking system or another benchmarking system, it's one staffing guide versus another. There may be small nuances in our calculations versus the other calculation that are just a little bit different. It could be the way you interpret a full-time equivalent calculation. It could be the way that you interpret volume, but it still means the data is valid. Both submissions are accurate. Both pieces of information are accurate. It's just a matter of which one resonates more with what your goals are and what you're looking towards. So I think that's one of the ways to view data. It's always a starting point. Without data, you can't make decisions, but it also shouldn't hold you back from moving forward.
And I think defining the data is really key, especially when it comes to productivity.
Great point.
So we can compare various departments all day. We can try to take different productivity targets and pick them up and put them over here. But if you aren't defining your department the same way, and if you aren't defining how you're pulling in your productive hours, let's say. So when we think about productive and worked hours, do they include your orientation and education or don't they? Do they include your training time or don't they? And that makes a big difference. So defining the data is really key to being able to compare it. So I can take different benchmarks and I can take different comparisons from various systems or different clients. And if it's defined differently, they're not comparable.
Yes.
They don't, I don't like the apples to apples comparison because there's like how many different types of apples out there, just like there's how many different types of hospitals out there. But really you're not looking at a true comparison because they're not defined the same. So I think we really have to make sure we define the data before we try to compare it.
I would like to state that if we're talking about apples for a minute, I really have a passion right now for the Evercrisp apple. If you have not tried the Evercrisp, it has definitely taken over the Honeycrisp in my mind. But
all right.
So check
You're
it out.
You're here first.
But back to data, I think consistency is important. And I'm going to just sidetrack from Catalyst before we show everyone a couple points in it. Is with data, one of the components is you need consistency. And that consistency provides you with the framework of definitions and frameworks for moving forward. So regardless of what you're doing, benchmark systems, reporting tools, the most important thing as a leader in order to have data-driven leadership is to make sure you have the data, that you're going to consistently track it and collect it and then act upon it. And the goal is to improve based off of that data. So regardless of where it's telling you are now, where do you want to go? What's your what's your current status and where are you going in the future? And what do you want your improvement to be? Do you want to improve by 2%? Do you want to improve by 5%? Whether it's a quality improvement score, patient satisfaction improvement, and employee satisfaction or productivity, where are you and what's your goal? And then to take the action steps of how you're going to actually achieve that goal.
Absolutely. Consistency. And I think timeliness, when I look at some of the challenges that organizations face with data, there are still some really antiquated systems out there. There are still hospitals out there that have systems that need to be upgraded, that have systems that are challenges that block them from pulling the data that they need. So then data isn't consistent and it's not timely. So when you're trying to have a productivity initiative or you're trying to make decisions and track trends, when you don't get data till 3 months later, how are you able to react to it? Because we're already so past the 3 months. We're over the 3 months ago, right? And so now here we are, now we have data, and now we're expected to make a decision based off of that data. So consistency, timeliness, accuracy. I think there's a trend that we're hearing here when we're talking through data-driven leadership and data-driven decisions.
Absolutely. So you think it's a good time to go out and check out Catalyst for a little bit?
Let's take a look. Alrighty, so here is Catalyst in all of its glory. When anybody logs on, they're going to see their dashboard page. They're going to see trends. We like to look at rolling trends because those averages tell a little bit of a different story. They're a little bit easier to focus on the path that a department is going on. But we also like bi-weekly trends. So if you know anything about us, we really like trends. We like to make decisions based off of trends. So we have widgets here that show a variety of different trends.
Yeah, because one pay period is only one pay period. It's an important, component when you're looking at making decisions as a leader, that you're looking at multiple pay periods. As Randy Lynn mentioned, we love rolling averages. And the reason we like rolling averages, when you're looking at data, you look at predictability, you're even looking at prospective information, is it evens out the vacation periods, it evens out those anomalies where your volume might be spiking for one or two reasons. Also, sometimes whenever providers are on vacation or particular situations happen, the volume drops.
Yep.
So you want to take out those anomalies by having rolling averages, so it makes it easier for you to make predictions based off of those data points.
And I think there's a really great example of that. If we look at the performance trend on the right-hand side, where we're looking at 13 individual pay periods, there is a dip in actual productive FTEs. There is a dip in your volume adjusted, or those recommended FTEs. And why is that? Because that is the Christmas and New Year's holiday, if we look at that pay period there. So, volume's going down, activity is going down, people are taking vacation. But that looks like, if we were to react to that, it would look like we'd have a couple of different reactions to that. One, where did our volume go? And two, wow, our FTEs are really down here. So as compared to the rolling trend on the left, where we see a little bit more of a fluid movement.
Yeah, it definitely helps you to see the fluid movement and see things over periods of time other than others.
Right. So moving down through our widgets, our center widget there is going to show you just your variances for productive and paid FTEs and how they're trending. It's going to show you them for every pay period. It'll show you year to date. I'm actually going to have us go back up to the top and pick a specific department. So this is the view all, and we're going to just grab that medical supportive care there, 3 down. That is excellent. So now we're going to look at a specific department. This is going to show you what kind of a manager sees. Now we can go down a little bit further into our widgets here. All right, those were the widgets that I wanted to see that they show up for the individual department. Excellent. So we talked a little bit about the FTE breakdown and about how you're using your hours and how sometimes we don't know how much is agency and how much is overtime. This FTE breakdown widget is going to show the leader how they're using their hours. And here, when we're looking, we do see a little bit of a heavy usage of agency. So that's where I would focus. I would really start to look at what's my plan to reduce agency. And I'm sure everybody wants a plan to reduce agency and move towards really making that decline, that decrease in that premium dollar. But other widgets that we see out here, we're looking at volume, we're looking at targets. We call our productivity performance, that productivity percentage, our efficiency rate. So at Altius, you'll hear us talk about that efficiency rate. And all of our clients, they kind of hone in on that efficiency rate that we see on the left-hand side, that kind of gear widget that you see there. So knowing how often you're hitting your percentage for efficiency is really great for the leaders to know.
And you mentioned agency. I just want to, give a quick shout out. I'm not going to mention the client's name, even though they might want me to, but agency is such a big ticket item right now. And we had a client that they were spending over $9 million a year in agency, and they were a smaller community hospital, which was a lot for them. And I'm sure there are probably people on this call that wish that their agency spend was only $9 million. But for this hospital, it was a huge number. And that was about a 900% increase from where they were prior to the pandemic. And they were so excited when they got that under $1 million.
Absolutely.
So working together on the data, driving it down, getting strategies in place, following it, and having consistency, you can have a plan and actually change things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A couple more widgets that we see here are just some percentile comparisons. We're going to understand how we're performing against those percentiles. And I think before we wrap up today, the other area that I think is fantastic is the productivity section. So when we look at this section, this is what we call our data warehouse. And this is where those people, those leaders that love data, can really dig in and get a grasp around the data that they want to look at, the data that they want to manage and understand and really dive into, so that they can create their own reports from this, because we can export to Excel. They can create their own charts, graphs, and what they need to communicate to their team members, or what they might need to communicate to a financial committee, a finance committee, or the board even, to share the story of their department or support a request that they have as it relates to maybe changing something in their department, new equipment, or reducing agency, anything that they might want to do with this data, they have the ability to do because they can sort, they can choose timeframes, they can export, and it really gives them power around information.
I love that. And it's such a good tool. And I think that brings us to, components. One of the things that we really took into consideration with Catalyst 2 is how we develop our tools. Everything that's in here came from client requests.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we add a new feature to, the tools or the, daily data and other things, it's because clients requested that information and they requested that particular report. So every evolution that we have comes from our clients and they have a direct hand in what this looks like.
Yes. And I think so. Speaking of that, one of the things that came up recently with our clients is the ability to have an online variance report. So not necessarily your ION report, your productivity report, but an explanation of your variance. So rather than creating an in-house tool or an Excel spreadsheet or Word doc or whatever it was, they asked us to create something here that would align with their ION report, align with their performance, so that they could just fill it out and it would go straight to their senior leader if they were, let's say, below 95% efficient for 3 pays, or had a negative variance at a certain level for 3 pays, whatever the threshold is for the individual client. They would then be able to come out here into Catalyst, fill out that variance report. It would be attached directly with their performance and go straight to their VP. So that's in the works. That's exciting. I think that that will be something that all of our clients will appreciate, but it did come from the request of one of our individual clients that was really struggling with making that a consistent kind of standard of work, everybody using the same tool, everybody using the same report. And so now we're working through that.
I love that. And, for those of you that are listening, I'd really love to challenge you and, talk about, what do you wish your productivity system had, or what tools do you wish you had? What data do you wish you have access to that you don't? We'd love to hear from you in the comments about what do you need that you currently do not have, because it really helps us to understand, the industry and where things are and what you're working on. So we have a question coming in, and it's from Doug. Thank you, Stephanie. How do you critically analyze high variations with rolling averages? Does it mask the severity, or is it non-significant when you're looking for retroanalysis? And that is a great answer, great question, Doug. And we have an answer for that. And I'm probably going to answer a little bit different than Randy Lynn would, so we'll both give it. But when you're looking at the variations and the rolling averages, they're going to give us 2 components. And we always want to understand what those peaks are. So I look at it as, what are your minimum staffing needs and minimum volume areas, but then also what are your maximum volumes and your maximum needs. So we're going to have those peaks and understand what those staffing models look like. But the rolling averages and the predictability and the critical analysis of the rolling averages are going to set the bar for what we need on 80 to 90 to 95% of the days that are impacting things, and provide us with that critical analysis of the majority of the situations we're encountering. However, there are going to be those vacation periods. There are going to be those peak census points where we're getting flooded with patients. And we're going to have to understand that as well. So you have to take both into account. The rolling averages just really help to normalize things. So you're looking at that prospective needs and really getting together what we like to refer to as a strategic staffing plan. A lot of organizations have strategic plans. We all know what our markets are. We all know what we're trying to grow. We know where we're trying to go. With chronic disease, we have a fantastic strategic plan, but we never link it into our staffing. So that really helps us to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, when we look at those big swings, it's something that I try to always sit down with our clients, the managers, and really talk through, okay, what happened? Why did volume go significantly down? But also too, how did we react to it? That's also the question that I want to ask when we have those variations. How did we react to that change? And if we had surgeons out, if we had 2 surgeons out and you're a smaller organization, well, obviously your volume is going to go down. But did we react with our staffing? Did we follow that and make sure that we are operationally reacting to it? And then we can explain when we go back and look at those variations in the data.
Absolutely. And we have another question and comment coming up from Dr. Rodriguez. And I feel that the naming convention for data points is critical for the end users to understand. And we talked about that earlier, how important the definitions are. My question for you is, who in nursing is getting the data, and is the data presented in a manner that it can be acted upon in a timely manner? Now, I'm going to talk about nursing for 1 second with data, because there is a common practice within nursing, within the industry, and it's still used today that, the most common volume indicator tends to be patient days. And a lot of organizations use midnight census. And there's nothing wrong with using midnight census as your patient day. However, it's not necessarily the most accurate indicator of your volume throughout the day, as patients are coming in and patients are going out, especially if you're housing outpatients on your unit and other things, observation patients. So we're very passionate about, working through, situations where you have other definitions of patient days and get equivalent patient days. And I'm going to let Randy Lynn take the nursing comment about, the data presented in a manner, because she works so much with our clients in the nursing areas and, has, I think, a passion for getting the data there that they need to act upon.
It's acting upon and understanding it too. So I think with nursing is making sure that we're speaking the same language. So in order to act upon data, the nurse leaders have to understand what that data represents, what that data is, and what they need to do with it. So part of our process is really starting at the base and that foundation of education around the data, around the terminology, and around how to use it. Timely data is always a challenge. Especially when we're talking productivity and the movement within nursing, right? So I normally work on Med-Surg A, but today I'm going to work on Med-Surg B, but those hours don't get transferred until it's the payroll is being submitted. So the productivity for those departments don't necessarily mesh the day of. But I think when we educate our leaders around data and around data-driven decision-making, they operationalize on a daily basis based off of those critical thinking skills and that foundation that I talked about around the data and the definitions and how to use that data, so that when we get to the end point or we get to the end of the pay period or the end of the day, that operationalizing of the data and the decision making gets them to where they need to be.
And I'm just going to add one more point to Randy Lynn's comments, is that sometimes we fail to include the supervisors and the house supervisors in those conversations and the education. And it's important that they understand too, because many times they're making the decisions on the staffing models, the productivity, and whether to bring in additional staff or not bring in additional staff. So another message there is make sure you're including everyone in the conversations and the education.
And I think sometimes what we miss there are the teaching moments where by the time we get back in over the weekend or by the time, the next day comes around, we're already in that moment, right? And we don't go back and say, why didn't you or why did you make these decisions? In your supervisory role, that off-shift supervisor, the charge nurse, who's ever doing that in those off-shift hours, those later hours in the evening or overnight or the weekend. So really going back and saying, let's talk through this. And then also, this was a great decision that you made to bring somebody in, or this was a great decision that you made based off of the census to flex people out. So celebrate and reinforce the good decisions also, but also acknowledge when we need to have a teaching moment and say, okay, let's pause. And it's really hard to go back and do that because we're so caught up in the day-to-day. And I think our nurse leaders, a lot of our leaders within healthcare have so many demands on them. We just talked to somebody the other day about it's hard for them to prioritize. They don't have enough time. And that really concerns me because what is getting in their way of being able to do their job as a leader?
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about time, when we're talking about nurse leaders and leaders in general in healthcare, we have a lot of competing priorities right now. Mm-hmm. So taking those teaching moments and rewarding and recognizing is so important to make sure that everyone feels, good about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And we're extremely happy about everyone that's, stuck with us during this. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. And, we really want to give back to those of you who, have been able to stay around and that you've gained value from the conversation. We appreciate the comments. Keep dropping them. If you've stuck around and you're interested in a demo of Catalyst, or you even want to just have a discovery call to talk through productivity at no cost, feel free to reach out to either Randy Lynn or myself. Drop us a message on LinkedIn, send us an email. We're very accessible. We'd love to spend time with you, talk more about, what's currently going on in your individual departments, and even, what some of your biggest challenges are, with your data systems, with productivity, or just obstacles in general. So we'd love to extend that, direct message us, reach out. We'd love to help.
Yes, absolutely. We look forward to the conversations.
So any last, thoughts on Catalyst, on data, or anything else that you want to provide before we wrap up for today?
Well, we're always open to feedback. So if anybody listening had some ideas on additions, additional tools or functionality within Catalyst, I'm open to hearing about it. So we always want to make sure that our clients are getting the best tools and resources within Catalyst that we can offer them.
I love that. Help us help you get the data that you need and help us help you getting the tools and the information that you need. And it's been a joy to spend some time with you today. We hope that you liked spending your lunch break or your morning break or your evening break or catching this, after work with us. Drop us a comment, and, we look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.